Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Dietitian Diana. In today's video, we're going to get a little bit more serious. I want to talk about a topic that I feel like isn't talked enough about in the diabetes space, and that's the long-term complications that can arise from having type 2 diabetes. Because if left untreated for a long period of time, type 2 diabetes can lead to some serious health complications, including heart disease, kidney disease, eye disease, etc. So this video is not meant to scare you or frighten you or intimidate you in any way, but just make you more aware of the very serious and life-threatening conditions that can arise from leaving type 2 diabetes untreated. However, the good news is that by changing your lifestyle and gaining control of your blood sugar, you can significantly reduce the chances of these complications developing. So as you probably already know, type 2 diabetes isn't something that develops overnight. It usually takes years to develop, and it starts with insulin resistance, when your cells become resistant to insulin's actions. The purpose of insulin is to act kind of like a key, right? It unlocks these little doors on your cell's surface. These doors open and glucose is able to get out of your bloodstream and into your cells. And then your cells can use it for energy or store it for later use. As insulin resistance develops, our cells become less responsive to insulin's actions. So if insulin can't open these doors, if it's becoming less efficient at opening these doors, then it's going to be harder for glucose to leave our bloodstream and get into our cells. And it's going to start to slowly build up. So the more insulin resistance you have, the more glucose is going to build up in your bloodstream. As the glucose rises above normal levels, you start to get into the prediabetes range. So prediabetes is diagnosed as having an A1C between 5.7 and 6.4%, or having a fasting blood sugar between 100 and 125 milliliters per deciliter. If nothing is done to reverse prediabetes and you continue your same lifestyle, there's a good chance it's going to continue to progress to type 2 diabetes. More glucose is going to continue to build up in your bloodstream. So as glucose builds up in your bloodstream, it's eventually going to lead to type 2 diabetes levels, which is diagnosed as having an A1C of 6.5% or greater, or having a fasting blood sugar of 126 milliliters per deciliter or greater. So one of the main concerns and dangers of having all this excess glucose in our bloodstream is that it's actually toxic to our organs and to all the blood vessels and nerves that we have throughout our body. So today I want to go over some of the more major complications that can arise from having too much glucose in your bloodstream. So the first complication is going to be heart disease. So over time, having very high amounts of sugar in our blood can start to damage all the very tiny, delicate blood vessels and nerves of our heart. And unfortunately, people with diabetes are twice as likely to have a heart attack or a stroke versus someone without diabetes. In fact, heart disease is the leading cause of death in people with type 2 diabetes. And really sadly, more than 65% of people with type 2 diabetes die from heart complications like stroke, heart attacks, and heart failure. Another very serious complication of type 2 diabetes is kidney disease. So similar to what happens to our heart, having too much sugar in our blood can also start to damage all the blood vessels of the kidney. And as this damage accumulates, the kidney's ability to function also starts to decline. And over 30% of people with diabetes will also have kidney disease. In fact, diabetes is the leading cause of kidney disease in the United States. I remember working at a dialysis unit. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to get into type 2 diabetes, because almost everyone there hooked up to these machines, having their blood filtered because their kidneys were no longer capable of doing that. They were there because of type 2 diabetes. And a lot of them were Latinos, and I'm half Puerto Rican. And so it really broke my heart. It was one of those moments where I knew I wanted to dedicate my career to helping people with type 2 diabetes. So another serious and very common complication from type 2 diabetes is nerve damage. So nerves are very important because they send signals from our brain to different parts of our body. And having persistently high blood sugar levels can start to damage these. And so that communication doesn't work as efficiently. So diabetes-related nerve damage, which is also referred to as diabetic peripheral neuropathy, it affects nearly half of the people who have diabetes. And it tends to cause pain or numbness in the extremities. So a very common place for this to happen is in the feet and the toes. You start to feel numbness there and pain. And more than 30% of people with diabetes suffer from autonomic neuropathy, which is nerve damage related to your internal organs. One example of this is the nerves associated with your stomach. So our stomach and our intestines move and push food through after we eat. And what happens with gastroparesis is the nerves of our stomach and our intestines start to get damaged. You might feel very bloated. You might have discomfort in your stomach because your gastrointestinal tract is having a hard time moving and digesting food. And one thing about nerve damage is that you may not notice symptoms until the damage has become very severe. Another very common complication I want to talk about is foot problems. So you may have heard that amputations can happen because of diabetes. And one of the reasons for this is that diabetes can sometimes restrict the flow of blood to the feet. So when this happens, it becomes more difficult for any cuts, ulcers, sores on your feet to heal. And open wounds are more at risk for infections, and in extreme cases, amputations happen. And it's not surprising that diabetes is one of the leading causes of amputations in the United States. And if you are experiencing nerve damage in your feet and it's resulting in numbness, then there is an increased chance of you not feeling those cuts when they happen. And those cuts can get worse a lot quicker. So it is vital to make sure you're checking your feet regularly and to ensure proper foot hygiene. And the last complication I want to talk about is vision loss. Diabetic retinopathy is eye damage due to diabetes, and it's the top cause of blindness in working age adults. One of the reasons diabetes leads to this is because high glucose levels can cause the blood vessels in our retina to swell and to leak, and it can lead to blurred vision, and extreme cases it can lead to blindness. So those are some of the serious long-term complications of type 2 diabetes. There are more, but I just wanted to touch on some of the more major ones. And just to reiterate, these complications tend to arise when type 2 diabetes is left untreated for a very long period of time. So one of the most effective ways to prevent these complications or significantly reduce your risk of developing these complications is to make sure you're consistently keeping an A1C of 7% or below. So research shows that consistently keeping it below this percentage will reduce your complications. And of course, the lower you keep it, the lower your risk of developing these complications will be. So make sure you're taking your diabetes medications as prescribed from your doctor. Your doctor is giving you these medications to prevent these complications. Again, high blood sugar is very dangerous. We want to make sure it's well controlled if you have diabetes. So make sure you're taking your medications so that you can control your blood sugar. Of course, changing your lifestyle is going to be a very effective way of gaining control of your blood sugar and keeping your A1C in a healthy range. Different diets work for different people, but ones that have research behind them that show to be effective for diabetes management are going to be the Mediterranean-based diet, a vegetarian-based diet, and low-carb diet. However, there is also research to show that low-carb diets tend to be a little bit harder to sustain in the long run for some people. So keep that in mind when changing your diet. Think about something that's going to be sustainable for you in the long run. Most of the people that we've helped who've been successfully able to lower their A1C into the normal range or prediabetes range find that Mediterranean or vegetarian-based diets are much more effective and tend to be much easier to sustain in the long run. So of course, diet plays a big role, but so does exercise. If you don't know where to start with exercise, try to at least walk after your meals. So if you can do a 15 to 20 minute walk after your meals, if you can't do all three of your meals, try to do it after your biggest meal, and then also incorporate 2 to 3 strength training or resistance training workouts a week. I'll link the video here. Definitely give it a watch so you can learn more about why exercise really is such a powerful tool for type 2 diabetes. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful. Again, this video was not meant to frighten or intimidate anyone, but just make you aware of the complications because there are so many people I talk to who aren't even aware that these are issues that could arise because of type 2 diabetes. So if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. We'll see you in our next video.